Hey guys, Jippy with Bomb City Reptiles here, and today we're going to go over a breeding ball python's timeline. So basically, to get started with breeding your ball pythons, you got to pick when your season's going to be. My season usually begins in October. Now, before I just start throwing anybody together, I do some planning first before October hits to kind of get in mind what I'm going to be breeding. So go through, weigh your female, weigh your male. Your female needs to be at least 2 years of age and at least 1,500 grams. I usually like mine to be a little bit more than that, usually about 1,700 grams before I start the breeding season, but you can do it at 15 as long as they don't look unhealthy. Males can be about 8 months old and at least 700 grams. Once your weights are where they need to be, you can start picking out what you're wanting to pair. What female, what male, Also, just in case, while you're scribbling down, you want to breed this female with this male, make a backup plan. Make a backup male part of that too, because you never know kind of what's going to go on during the breeding season. So if you've got one female that you really like and you really want to pair it with this one male, pick another male that would be just as good, just in case that other one, there's no pairing that goes on. So once you've got your list of what male you want to breed to what female, everybody's weights have been written down, you know what the breeding season is going to start with, then comes about October 1st is when I kind of get started. As soon as October 1st hits, I start dropping temperatures. So my average temperature in my reptile room, or my ball python room, is about 77 degrees average in this room. My hot spots are all set to about 90, depending. Sometimes it's a little bit less because as it reads on the thermostat, it's a little lower than 90. But when I use a temp gun on the actual area, it's a little warmer than that. So I usually just dial them all in so that everything's where I need it to be. I usually take it from 90 degrees and I drop it down about a degree for that first week. The next week I drop it down about 2 degrees. The next week about 3 degrees. And then all the way down until I'm about 85 degrees. So once I'm at 85 and everybody sits like that for about a week, that's when I will go and I will introduce my male to my female. Now, that doesn't mean set them out on a counter or in a cardboard box and just put them together. The easiest way to do it is make sure that your female's in an adequate sized cage. You take your male, you put them in the female's enclosure. Sometimes it's a little bit, good depending on what kind of substrate you have to kind of wet down the enclosure beforehand. I usually, since I'm on paper towels, I just kind of spill the water bowl just a little bit when I'm putting the male in, just to kind of boost that humidity on there. That way the pheromones can move through the air easier, and usually things happen, a little quicker that way. Once the male has been in the enclosure with the female for about 48 hours, I usually remove him. Now, during that 48-hour period, I will check to make sure that, if there's any locking that has gone on, if their tails are curled around each other, or if they're right up next to each other, just seeing if those areas are anywhere near each other. If I see a lock, I record it, and I write that down on my journal for the pairing. Noted lock this day, AM, PM, whenever. And I continue to check them. After the 48 hours, take your male out. Put him back in his cage. He gets about a week off. Usually what I do, about 5 days. During that 5-day period, I offer food, both to the female and the male. Usually, the female will eat no problem. The male, depending, may take the meal, may not. Sometimes males will go on a hunger strike whenever it's breeding season. Just be ready for that. That's why the male kind of needs to be at an adequate weight before all this starts, because, he's going to start starving himself because all he's going to care about is that female. So, once you introduce him, or after you take him out, they feed. 5 days is over with. Take him, put him back in the enclosure with the female. leave them together again, see if there's any more locks. After 2 weeks of, seeing if there's any pairing, if I do have pairing between the two, then I start a 3-week break. So after I've got 2 weeks and I've got confirmed pairings, during that 24-hour to 48-hour period between both of them, I give the male a 3-week break off. This kind of helps, I don't like my males to go off food, and sometimes if I do this, they kind of will eat a little bit more. So after the 3 weeks, I put them back in, 48 hours, take them back out. Now, if you come to the end of your 48-hour period and you open the female's enclosure and they're still locked, don't remove them. Put them back, or just close the cage, leave them alone, come back just a little while later, see if they're still locked up. Just keep checking them. Sometimes they can be locked up for a long time. Once they're not locked, that's when you can take them out. Do not ever forcibly pull them apart or anything like that, or spook them into pulling each other apart, because you could do damage to the male and the female that way. So every 3 weeks, introducing the male, putting him in the enclosure, notating every single lock that happens. This usually goes on, by the time I've usually got my temperature set in, before I start breeding, it's November. Usually I'm breeding the entire way through winter, all the way until February. Same scenario. Feeding during the off times, putting them together for 24 to 48 hours, recording every lock. After that's complete, usually after February, I don't add the male anymore. Pretty much if you've gotten locks, his job is done. If you get halfway through, and you don't have any locks, that's when you might need to think about putting in your backup male. Just to see if you get, anything. If you start seeing locks from your backup male, good, cool. Now he's probably going to be the baby daddy. That doesn't mean that the first one didn't do anything, but you just didn't catch it, so it's good to have a backup male just in case. That does cause who's your daddy clutches sometimes, because you'll get snakes that come out of the clutch and you're going, wait a minute, I don't remember adding this. Make sure you document everything. Document what male went with what female, so if you do have some milkman style baby in the clutch, oh, well, I remember in the first, early in the breeding season I put this male to her. So that's where that gene came from. So once February hits, no more male. Keep feeding your female. Just, offer food to the male. Usually by February, they don't want anything to do with food, so they're going to have to go on probably a 3 to 6 week break before you actually do get them to go on anything. Sometimes, depending on the male that you have, if they're eating frozen, if they start going on a hunger strike after breeding season and they won't eat frozen again, you might have to resort to giving them live. You might have to resort to fresh kill. You might have to resort to mice. Just try stuff to kind of get him, his appetite kind of going. Usually after he's had one meal, from then on, he'll start eating and everything will be fine. He will most likely go back to frozen. Everything will be cool. Your female, just keep feeding her the exact same meals that you have been feeding her. Now, during this time, you're going to see your female, she's going to be very hungry. She's going to start gaining weight and looking a lot fuller, a lot bigger. So from February, April, and May, monitor her feedings. If she starts to go off of food, you're getting kind of close. So once she goes off of food, okay, she doesn't want anything. She's probably building follicles. She's probably, trying to get those eggs built. So now you just leave her alone. Limited moving. If you do have to move her to clean her tub, very ginger, no stress. Once she gets close to the pre-lay shed, they don't look like their normal blue. They kind of look brighter. I think Balls to You calls it the glow before they go. But it's a brighter look to them. They look like, I've got a fire that when she goes into just about pre-lay shed, she just looks awesome. I mean, so bright, so vivid. About April, May, no feed, she's not doing anything, she's either moving from the cold spot to the hot spot to the cold spot, I start raising my temps up about the exact same. About usually into February, early April, I'll start moving my temps up. Don't kick it all the way up to 90. Do the same gradual step that you did in the beginning of the breeding season. 1 degree until gradually you're back up to your 90-degree mark. You're going to notice that she'll, be on the cool side, she'll be on the hot side, she might do some bowl wrappings. There's on occasion you'll go in and check on them and their belly will be straight up, pointing at the air. This is just them getting comfortable, them, kind of building follicles and doing what they need to do. Once the pre-lay shed hits, that's when you start marking on a calendar. Usually the pre-lay sheds that I have are May or June, because some of my girls are a little bit of a procrastinator, but pre-lay shed hits, you mark that down, count 30 days. So 30 days from the pre-lay shed. Once that day, a little bit before, a little bit after, you need to start checking her. Check her in the morning, check her in the afternoon, check her at night. Just watch her. Just see what she's doing. Usually my girls will go a little bit past the 30-day mark. Usually, sometimes it's 4 days, sometimes it's a week. Just if she's sitting on the warm spot, just coiled around, you're going to come in most likely and she's going to be laying eggs or have already laid eggs. Now, this is your preference on how you want to do it, depending on your setup. Some people will let the mother incubate the natural incubation way. Others will pull the eggs and put them in their incubation media and put them in an incubator. This is up to you on how this goes. I don't like leaving mine with my females because I want them to get back on food as soon as they can. Because if they're sitting on those eggs, pretty good chance they're not going to eat the entire time that they're on those eggs. So you'll take her. What I usually like to do is I move her to a completely different cage that I've already had set up. Completely clean, new paper towels, new hide if you have that, new water bowl, everything. Once she's in there, you've got your eggs, they're in the incubator. You clean that other tub out, as best you can because you don't want any smell or anything like that in there as far as that's going to kick another female, into a problem because it's that smell of the eggs. If you just take the eggs out and you leave the female in there, she's going to coil up around where those eggs were and she's still going to try and incubate even though there's nothing there because she still smells it. She smells that those eggs are there. So that's why I just completely remove them, put them in a completely different tub, and then I leave them be. I let them go for just a little while. Usually after they lay, they'll shed again. After that shed is when I will start offering food. With most of my females, as soon as that shed's done, they're back to eating. Back to getting those pounds back up to where they are, healthy again. Because after she lays, she's not going to look very good. She's going to look really flat and not a lot of body fat on her. As far as the eggs go, they're in your incubator. I usually count to 55 days. So 55 days from the lay day, I start watching my eggs, making sure that they haven't gone green, everything looks good. Usually if they lay them in a big clump, I like to leave them in that clump and just give them some supports with some straws just so they don't roll around or roll off. If they're kind of spread out all over the cage or they've just not attached to each other yet, I will use a flashlight and kind of see where the embryo is just to candle them a little bit. Try to get that embryo up on the top of the egg so that it's just kind of floating on the top. It usually helps out a little bit better and you'll have a higher hatch rate that way. So after the 55-day mark, they might look like they're starting to shrivel up a little bit, like they're losing some of the liquid on the inside of them. At that point, you're getting close to hatching. Now, there's a giant debate going on cut, no cut. It's up to you, whatever you want to do. Usually at day 55, I monitor my eggs. If I already have one pipped, I go ahead and cut the rest of them. If I don't have any pipped, I usually give it at least 2 more days just to see if anything happens. If nothing does, I just do small slits in the eggs just to kind of help the babies out if they get, like they need help if they're not able to do it on their own. Once the babies have started sticking their heads out and breathing, great, you're almost there. The babies will eventually leave their egg once they've absorbed their yolk and everything that they needed from it. I leave the babies in the tub that I was incubating them in. Once they've all left the egg, I will remove the shells that are left over, leave the incubation media, and leave the babies. Of course, making sure that there's not like an airtight lid or something on there, that there is some refresh from when you open the door of the incubator. I leave them in that tub until they all shed. After that, I move them into their individual tubs with their own water, their own hides if you do hides, their own substrate, and I give it probably about a week. After a week, that's when I start offering food. You can offer mice, you can offer rats, frozen, not frozen, whatever your preference to try and get them to go. Usually with my babies, I'll offer frozen first just to see who's going to eat frozen just right off the bat. I usually have 1 or 2 that will just, I thaw everything out in hot water, put it in the cage, and then I leave them alone for a while. I come back, check and see. I usually have 1 or 2 that have already, eaten the frozen mouse or frozen rat, and they're good to go. The others, if they continue to not take it, I usually switch over to live just to kind of entice them a little bit. Once you get about 5 meals in them, they should be about that weight range, about 90 grams or so. 79 to, 80 to 90 grams. And that's when they're pretty much ready for their new homes, if that's what you're going to do, or if you're going to keep them, then just keep feeding them, It's your snake. But that's pretty much it. Suggestions as far as knowing your ball pythons. I do not breed any of my females after they've already done 1 season. So if they breed a season, they lay eggs, they have that next season off. Leave them alone. Gives them time to de-stress, gain their weight back, you to monitor them to make sure everything's okay, health-wise, and then after they've had a breeding season off, then you can loop them back into the rotation and everything's fine. Your males, you just got to get them to eat again. Once you get them to eat, you get them back up and going, and where you want them weight-wise, they can go the next season, no problem. In fact, they would prefer it because they really like the ladies. Do your research on what you're pairing. Like I said in some of my genetic videos, do not do lethal combinations of genes. Don't breed 2 snakes together that should not be bred together because they cause the babies to either be born dead or to hatch and then die shortly after. Just do your research on lethal gene combinations and you should be fine. If you guys have any questions, anything you want to ask regarding breeding, I know I kind of sped through it kind of fast. That's just kind of the timeline that I do. Like currently right now, all the females that I paired this last season, they're done. I've got them in different tubs. They're all eating again. I've had 2 clutches already hatch out. I've got 1 more left in the incubator. And the only reason it's still in the incubator and not hatched out yet is because of that backup male situation. I had 1 male that I kept pairing to this girl. I thought I saw a lock. Not really sure. But I didn't see any more locks up to a certain point. So, took him out, started feeding him again, got his weight back off, and I put in that backup male. And that backup male, he's a trusted, proven breeder, and he got the job done. He every time I checked on him, they were locked. So, her season kind of went a little far because she didn't get, bred until a lot farther along than the other females that I had. So, that's the thing to keep in mind when you have that backup male. I'm trying to think if I have anything else for you guys. Just make sure that your pythons are healthy. You know, don't put a male that has skin and bones on it in with a female. Don't add any two snakes together if one of them's got mites or one of them's got an upper respiratory infection. Make sure your animals are healthy before you do any kind of breeding, because you don't want that to spread. You don't want to put your other animals at risk. Just make sure you watch them. They're your animals. You're going to learn real quick what they're going to react to. So, if you want to get into ball python breeding, I know I'm kind of spastic with it, but that's kind of how I do it. Again, if you guys have questions, shoot me a comment below. I'll try to answer it as best I can, and maybe a follow-up video regarding it if you guys need it. And if you like this video, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side. See ya.